Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome back to the Second Page podcast. I am Joseph Oswald. With me, as always, my good friend and co-host, Mr. Steven Johnson. How you feeling over there, Steve?
I'm quite all right, good sir.
Fantastic. It's good to be quite all right. We do appreciate your nephew running the boards for us again today, as he is learning a valuable trade for the future. It will make America good. Um, Today, episode 41, Duel of the Fates. This week we continue the trial in the court of public opinion of Brett
That
Kavanaugh.
is sorry. That is the name of the score from the Phantom Menace, isn't
Yes,
it?
it's one of my favorite scores.
Yes,
I
the
love it.
only good part of the prequels.
Indeed.
Please continue. Sorry.
Save it for on the reel.
Yes. All right. Sorry.
As we continue the trial in the court of public opinion on Brett Kavanaugh, are emotions the way to go, or keep it empirical? Do we judge everyone the same from Cosby to Kavanaugh? Trump went to the UN for a second time to stomp the yard.
No.
Better than booze, he got laughed at. Sometimes laughing at the bully only makes them bring bigger stones and more powerful atomic wedgies. The masses are huddled, the politicians are tired and anything but poor, as the wealthy yearn to break their contributions free. We may live to see a world where the United States does not exercise its considerable power and influence as overtly and bluntly on the foreigner, but may indeed have to turn it inward or collapse into isolated utopia. Join the conversation, comment live during the show. Please like, please share, please subscribe to our station on YouTube. And let's get the ball rolling.
The second page on YouTube. Check it
The
out.
second page on YouTube, yes. So let's get the ball rolling. We are going to hit, which one do you want to hit first? We got two, flip a coin, go.
Kavanaugh.
There you go. Brett Kavanaugh has now had another woman accuse him of sexual misconduct.
Brett is really turning out to be like a Brett.
Yeah, like a Brett with three T's.
Yeah.
Yeah, or Chad.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not the country in Africa, of course. But it would seem another person has come forward, and this time not from high school, from college, Yale, to be specific, one of the premier Ivy League institutions in America. She contends that Brett Kavanaugh at a party exposed himself to her, pushing his genitals to her face with a bunch of people in the room chanting her to kiss it, and she was mortified, and he laughed at her as he pulled his pants back up and made fun of her for not doing it and for being weirded out by it, as you can imagine most people would be. And you got to imagine this was 20 or 30 years ago, different times. I totally get it. And I know that there are plenty of us who can say firsthand that in college or high school or even middle school and possibly even earlier, I've met some people like that. That the way you are then is not who you are now, and you shouldn't be judged on that kind of stuff. But there's a reason that juvenile records still exist. There's a reason that people ask for your high school transcript when you're applying for a job after you graduate. There's reason why people want to know about your criminal history when you're applying for a job.
Okay, hold on. I'm going to let you finish,
Yes,
right?
I appreciate that.
There is no one older than 25 years old where they're asking to see. Matter of fact, maybe no one over 21 years old where they're asking to see a high school transcript.
Maybe not asking to see
Not
the transcript,
a
but they want to know
grown-ass
if you
30,
graduated.
40-something year old man, and Kavanaugh
Well,
might
you're
be 50.
missing the point. The point
Please,
is...
okay.
The point is...
I think it's actually all related, but go ahead.
Yes, no, I agree, and I'm interested to get to what you were talking about before when we mentioned Mr. Cosby. So we will flow into that. But what I'm getting at is that even if it happened in high school, even if it happened in college, if it happened once, it likely happened more than once, and if it happened 3 times, as is suggested by these accusations, then it likely happened even more than that. This is a person who is nominated by a president known to be a philanderer and a misogynist.
We should also point out, though, that he was not really picked by the president, right?
Correct.
This came
He was
from
added onto a list from the Federalist Society,
Yes.
So you would think that he would have been vetted by this. One of the things that strikes me the most and that makes this even more of an intriguing story is that it's very likely that the committee chaired by Chuck Grassley has had the information about these accusers far longer than they're suggesting, which would lead you to believe that they either were trying to cover this up or that the president himself and several Republicans on the committee are deliberately lying when they say that these accusations came out of nowhere or that they're unfounded or uncorroborated. As we mentioned in last week's show, that again, I apologize for having an injury. I was in quite a lot of pain, so I don't think I was able to focus as much, but at least I'm willing to apologize for it. Unlike some
First
people,
mistake, you never apologize, man.
well, maybe that's something that Brett has heard of because, you know, when you're going for a job interview, you are supposed to be vetted and you're supposed to answer all the questions as honestly as possible. And if you lie about it, you are subject to termination later. That's the same in the business world. It's the same when you sign any kind of contract. But this time, this man who has been nominated by the president, who is fulfilling his constitutional duty to fill a Supreme Court vacancy, has nominated a person who seems to have enough in common with himself that even if he did not overtly ask for an oath of fealty or anything like that, that it can be seen that he is looking to set himself in the best possible way for a legal battle that might stem from things he did before he was president, because even under the Bill Clinton situation, after you're done being president, you are still liable for prosecution for things that were deferred while you were president. I do want to take your opinion on that before I bring up my former topic
there was
about
a lot.
Franken.
There was a lot there, but what specifically did you want my opinion on?
I wanted your opinion on whether or not you believe that this person who is about to take a job with 9 seats out of the 330 million that are in this country that get to be the ultimate arbiter of what a woman gets to do with her body, what our laws mean, how things are done, and who they apply to for the next 20 or 30 years. Do you believe that it's legitimate to judge him based on something he did 20 or 30 years ago in the light of the Bill Cosby accusations and the Weinstein accusations and Kevin Spacey with the little boys 20 or 30 years ago in a theater? Do you believe that someone in Kavanaugh's position should legitimately be asked these questions, and that if they are true, disqualify him?
I, again, will go on record saying I think that Brett Kavanaugh, should already be disqualified for a number of reasons.
Including perjury.
Not least of which potential perjury, but also the fact that what his view is on the pardon power of the president, what his view is on the power of the president, and the fact that maybe if we couldn't nominate a judge in an election year, why should we nominate a judge from a president who is under investigation, and this judge may potentially weigh in on whether or what the powers of the president are, right? That is enough. I don't think you need this high school thing to disqualify him. And what I'm saying is it is a dangerous road that we go down. Right, and I will connect it to the Bill Cosby thing today. So,
well, I just wanted to ask one thing that I didn't want to ask before the show because I did want to have the conversation about it.
Oh, you wanted to spring this on?
Yes.
Okay.
So you say that you don't believe that we need to go down this road, and that by illusion you're suggesting that going down this road is a bad thing for us as a country or even as individuals.
I'm not by illusion. That's exactly what I'm saying.
Okay, so that's exactly what you're saying.
That's not the subtext. It's the text.
Okay, but now that you mention that, and especially using the word subtext, is it not possible at all for that kind of a statement to be interpreted even broadly as saying that you don't have to investigate every allegation unless it starts off with irrefutable evidence that someone can bring up that someone committed an act of violence or aggression? That could apply to things like child abuse, domestic abuse against the elderly, against wives or even husbands. Do you believe that we shouldn't go down this road because it's a political appointment and nomination process, or because him as an individual, Brett Kavanaugh as a man, as an American citizen, should not have to be put through this for something that happened 30 or some odd years ago and probably didn't happen again afterwards, because he clearly has led a very squeaky clean life since Yale. But does that mean we shouldn't ever go down that road at all? We should never look into these kind of things. We should never investigate Ronan Farrow's accounts of what happened with Brett Kavanaugh, or what was her name with Harvey Weinstein, the short-haired one that was on Charmed.
McGowan?
Not Rose McGowan.
Okay.
The other one.
Don't know.
I can't remember. But are you suggesting that we don't go down
So
the
here's
road
the
ever?
problem. I think the main thing that I'm suggesting is that we should look at all these things within the context of what they are, right? And so because I'm saying in this instance this is a bad idea, because of what it represents or will represent for the future, in this instance, what this is being used for is to buy the Democrats time until after the midterm elections, when they are gambling that they, because of the sentiment in the country, that they may be able to take back not only the House but the Senate.
Well, you've said it
Right?
many
And
times before that Republicans are in charge now, but where they're going to make all these rules that they can do whatever they want, and then when Democrats are in charge, they're going to cry foul when they do the same thing. So, but is this obstructionism, which it just is? I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Democrats are obstructing this, in a way, but is this not a form of resistance? Is this not the same thing Mitch McConnell did when he obstructed Merrick Garland's nomination for a year out of political purpose because he was gambling that a Republican would win the White House?
That was terrible. And I get, look, sometimes you have to play dirty to win. What I'm saying is this in the broader context of what's happening right now. So again, I will try and attempt to pivot to Cosby.
I think that's probably wise, but I also want to mention that nobody, there weren't any surprise sexual assault allegations against Neil Gorsuch. His nomination sailed through relatively unimpeded, and that was Trump making a nomination within weeks of his presidency. It's not like this is the tactic that we always go on, but if there is evidence, which there was, the committee had the information.
I would say that under Neil Gorsuch, they didn't think they could get away with it then.
But now that Trump's got a second pick on the court, and he could possibly have a third, and God forbid even a fourth if he wins a second term, don't you think that people who staunchly believe that this is an illegitimate presidency or that this is a corrupt administration that does not deserve power would do everything they can to stand in the way
I
of that?
agree too, but again, they are corrupt. I have no problem admitting that. I don't want this guy on the court. But at the end of the day, the way you do these things matter. And again, I get it. Like, this is a lifetime appointment. This
Before these accusations came out, did you think he deserved to sit on the court?
No. I still don't think he deserves to be on the court. I just don't think this is the way to do it. And again, the problem is when you begin to judge people by mistakes that children made.
I would hardly consider someone in Yale a child.
I'm not talking about the Yale thing. I'm talking about the high school 17-year-old.
Yeah,
thing.
Okay, look, I would understand in a small way, even though there's no excuse for sexual assault, whether you're drunk or not. I would understand if it was like, oh, he like kissed her and she pushed him
and
away.
Alcohol dumb shit.
She claims that he held her down, covered her mouth, and gave her the impression that he would murder her dead if she tried to stop him from doing what he wanted to do, and then another man in the room egged this on. That is her accusation, and it's a horrible. If you have a daughter, if you have a sister, a mother, a wife, a fiance, a girlfriend, if you have any of these things, to think about a woman being put in that situation, and then the man gets to get away with it because it happened 30 years ago, or because we were just drunk in high school. That excuse doesn't work when you're driving drunk and you kill someone. Oh, I'm just a high school kid. I'm drunk. I'm sorry. You can't make that excuse. If he had actually murdered her in that room that night, the world would, I mean, not the world, but his whole trajectory obviously would have been a completely different situation. He didn't. So that shows that he had some sort of restraint, but it also shows he felt like he was entitled to the point that he would get away with this, that if she had reported it that day, nothing would have happened, especially 30 years ago. Nothing would have happened.
But you don't know what was in his mind then. And I'm not,
Nobody does.
I don't want to be in the
vetting.
position. I'm not defending him.
I know you're
This is not about him.
I will never accuse you of defending him. I will
Right?
accuse you of sticking up for the right of every American to be treated equally. I get that that's what you're pushing for.
Right. And I see this as a problem. And I think that when you have principles, you have to follow them even with people you don't like.
And even if those principles inevitably would lead you into an even worse situation, is that not pride? Is that not what had Ned Stark's head cut off?
Look, all I'm saying is if you don't want to go down to this place where you're just like a banana republic and it doesn't matter what anybody does on anybody's side, and rules only matter when your side's not in charge, then that's not, you know what I mean? Look, all I'm saying is this. They got rid of Al Franken. And I said this in the last show, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, they got rid of Al Franken to prove that they would take their own so that they could get to a moment like this.
Absolutely. I think they hedged their long bet nicely.
That is a problem, right? And again, I'm forcefully segueing to Cosby now, right? The issue is this. Cosby was convicted today for 3 to
Not
10
convicted,
years.
Sentenced.
He was convicted a while ago. But sentenced today, 3 to 10 years. Made a big deal out of it. They took him out in cuffs, right? Regardless of
81 years old.
81 years old. He may die in prison, and maybe some people are happy about that. But how did they do this, right? The Constant trial was first labeled a mistrial. She made misstatements in that case. That's fine. People have different recollections of things. People are under pressure. Here's the problem with that. The way they were able to reopen this case was that Bill Cosby made an arrangement with a prosecutor, a signed agreement with a prosecutor that says, admit to this and it will not be held against you in a court of law.
I don't know why anybody would ever believe that. I don't care how rich,
powerful,
how good your lawyers are. I just
no,
don't.
but what my
How to
point
Make a
is,
Murderer,
the court
that's exactly why
system
there's a sequel.
Tells you this all the time. Oh, just plead guilty. Just say this. Now, if we're saying the word of a prosecutor with not just the word, because the idea is you get things in writing, right? And now we're saying we know that a prosecutor made that deal with you, and it's signed. We don't care about that. You know, like, what does that say when a person that is not rich and powerful like Cosby, right? What does it say when we are just willing to throw out the idea of arrangements and agreements and signed documents and promises, when we throw all that out because the public wants?
Well, as we're still technically under the topic of Kavanaugh, what does that say to nominate and possibly appoint a judge to the Supreme Court who will eventually get to decide how laws like that are made, or how procedure will be for lower courts? Brett Kavanaugh is going to be sitting on the court that decides, whether or not this kid from How to Make a Murderer, whether or not he gets a retrial, or whether or not they throw out his accusation because the prosecutors or the police or somebody misled someone else.
But it doesn't matter anymore. This is what I'm saying. Mm-hmm. If you are reopening a case going against what a signed agreement with a prosecutor, like, what is anything matter anymore? But see, that's exactly the fear of Brett Kavanaugh. If you can reopen sealed cases,
yeah. What about Roe versus Wade? What about Brown versus Board of Education? These are things that are supposed to be over and done with cases. They're supposed to be settled law, and you still can't get a straight answer out of people like Neil Gorsuch or Brett Kavanaugh about just say
those
this is
guys
sealed law. This
are
is done.
Scumbags.
Okay, but that's what we're talking about. The fact that Brett Kavanaugh, the sexual assault aside, these accusations aside, that this is a type of judge who would likely side with the party that suggested that they could do these things, that you could lie to someone to get a confession and then go back and open up a case. There are plenty of good judges out there that look at things, evidence, and say, is this fair, is this not fair? But then there are plenty of them who are just like, they don't see people, they see striped shirts and they see suits and ties, and they sit behind a desk while you sit on a chair well above them. I'm not condemning judges. I'm not saying judges in general are bad. I'm saying that when they're so politicized, like someone like Brett Kavanaugh, who's picked by the Federalist Society for a reason and nominated by someone like Donald Trump, who has the right to do so, but did not do his own real vetting, did not confer or do this with the idea that what's best for the American people. He's saying what's best for the conservative Republican Party. What's best for them? How do I keep feeding them so that they'll keep letting me get away with all this crazy bullshit? So letting someone like Brett Kavanaugh sit on the court just justifies all these things. It justifies the justice system lying to people. It justifies them putting 100 clients with one public defender. It justifies them allowing rich white guys who who poison water and let children die and take health care from people get away with house arrest or probation, and put someone like Bill Cosby, who did commit some horrible things at 81 years old, in jail for 10 to 15 years, despite the fact that lesser sentence was asked, and he had an agreement with the prosecution to not go have these gone after.
Also, I just want to be clear that of all the people that were caught up in the Me Too movement, whether it's Kevin Spacey, whether it's Harvey Weinstein, whether it is Louis C.K., none of them are in jail.
Mm-hmm.
You know who's in jail?
Bill Cosby.
What's different about him?
He's black. Even Kevin Spacey, who is, admittedly a homosexual, even
that doesn't matter. Yeah. The point is, Kevin Spacey is effectively a child molester.
There are Catholic priests who are not in jail right now, and these are children making accusations. They were children when they make the when it happened to them, and they make the accusation 30 years older as adults who have lived their entire lives with this trauma of having been molested by a priest. And they make the accusations. The only thing that makes it stick, the only proof that they have, because there were no pictures, there was no video, no one's admitting to anything, is that so many other people came forward and said something. This woman, Dr. Ford, who came forward as the first person, put her entire life, her career that she's worked for 50 or 60 years to create, on the line, has received numerous death threats, has moved out of her own home to make sure that this accusation is heard and thoroughly investigated, because a person like this does not deserve to be sitting on a court that will decide women's rights and civil rights.
Here is another problem with this whole, because...
And then other women came forward because of that. That's the proof you need.
I am fed up with the whole situation, right? In that the Republicans have already made up their mind. They don't want any more facts.
That's true.
Right?
They already scheduled a vote.
Right? So it doesn't matter. What they want to do is do whatever they have to get this guy confirmed. And the Democrats don't really care what happened. Like, neither side actually cares what actually happened. Right? This is a thing that they can use. And that is a problem.
Well, luckily, the only, I said...
But I think it all stems from the same thing, and I will weave these things together, but go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say is the other day, or the other show, when we had mentioned about how, John McCain could theoretically hold up this nomination by, refusing to vote or whatever and denying them quorum in the House and the Senate, and then he died the next day, thinking that if Democrats take over in the House, they have the power to subpoena, and unlike the president, there's really not too much that prevents a Supreme Court justice from being indicted or subpoenaed or ordered to give some kind of testimony or something like that.
That will never happen.
It's not going to ever happen, and we railed against it when Republicans tried to issue articles of impeachment against the judges in Pennsylvania for following through with their gerrymandering case. But the suggestion is that if Democrats can gain enough control of the House and the Senate, that they could theoretically impeach Judge Kavanaugh and possibly even Judge Thomas for either perjury or for their conduct or anything like that. And there's not very much that could stop them. You're not going to see, besides Donald Trump, ranting and railing about certain things, you're not going to see revolution in the streets over a Supreme Court judge.
By the way, again, Kavanaugh may have lied under oath. And so him being confirmed is a problem, and that has massive implications, right? I just need to stress that. My point is, in all of this, I think we are in this place where we lose context of everything. And once your laws no longer matter, that is a recipe for disaster.
I agree.
Right? And I think that, Sean Penn spoke about this, and Sean Penn is insufferable many times. But and you tell me this. I hope there's some women watching right now. Please put me in my place. But it feels like we're getting to this place where the movement is sort of, it's not really about having a discussion. It is get in line, and if you want to have any discussion, then you somehow support the patriarchy or toxic masculinity or whatever, right? And it just seems like, so let's say there's an accusation and you say, hey, I believe the accuser, but I think we should hear both sides, right? Mm-hmm. Just saying you want to hear the accused side, now somehow that translate to, you know, you don't support the victim, mm-hmm. right? Or the accuser, right? And I think that no matter what, people wanted Cosby, right? And maybe for good reason. But when you are going to break laws and rules to do that, that's a problem, because it feels like all this stuff is being guided by the public opinion, and mm-hmm. things are not being tried in front of actual courts of law, but courts of public opinion,
or even untainted courts.
Right. And then those courts of public opinions have now, with Cosby, now translated into actual courts breaking with protocol. And and again, when we are being ruled by what the mob tells us to think, I think is a problem. And again, this is not to say I'm not in support of women's rights. It's not about any of that. But if you want to go down these routes, and if you want to convict people, or if you want to, I don't think people should be held to standards of things that they did as drunk high school kids. But as it relates to Cosby, if you want to prosecute Cosby, then you got a mistrial. Try him again, but get another case, but don't do it by opening a sealed document, mm-hmm. right? And that is a dangerous path to go down, in my opinion.
I agree with you, and it goes to show that you know, even now, even in a court where everything is supposed to be fair and done a certain way, you know, deals don't matter, agreements don't matter, civility doesn't matter. And one of the last things that I want to mention about this topic before we switch up a little bit, I wanted to say one thing which you brought up earlier, and I wanted to write my idea or my thought down of it, was, you know, if Brett Kavanaugh is confirmed, it fully tilts the court to the right, to a conservative ideology that's not just the conservatives of the Reagan era, but it's two Trump conservatives on there as well, who very likely could overturn Roe versus Wade or Board versus Education and allow the states to decide how they want to handle those certain issues. It would likely lead to abortion being illegal in more than half the states, probably. And it could also see the complete overturn of the ACA, in that the individual mandate's already gone, which was what was held up by the Supreme Court as a tax, that they said it's perfectly legitimate for the government to issue a tax, regardless of what means. And by getting rid of that, they get rid of the strongest portion of that case. So I see that being revisited, one of the first things that Brett Kavanaugh will have an impact on. But I've been watching a series on Netflix called The Untold History of the United States, narrated by Oliver Stone, produced by Oliver Stone.
I remember that.
It's great. It's a great series, hour-long episode, just talking about how we got to where things are, and I'm up to, you know, the Truman era.
How would you compare that to, say, a Michael Moore documentary?
I would say it's far more unbiased. Okay. Far more even-handed and informational and educational, but gives you great context and perspective through video, through stuff. And what I wanted to mention specifically was the 1944 nomination for the Democratic Party's vice presidential candidate. Franklin Roosevelt had Henry Wallace as his vice president, and when it came up to the nomination for the third time, you know, Roosevelt was tired, he was sick, he was getting a little older, and despite the fact that the vast majority of delegates were chanting that they wanted Wallace. These are people that were excited the way Bernie Sanders people were excited, except there was a majority of them. The Henry Wallace was completely abused by the Democratic Party and by democracy in general when a bunch of party bosses decided that their livelihoods and their power in the party and in the country was far more valuable than a progressive getting to be a vice president. They knew FDR was sick, and he died 82 days later. They forced Truman onto the ballot by cutting off the mic, by stopping the nomination process at the delegation, and they adjourned they literally blocked him from walking up there and just saying, "I nominate Henry Wallace," and that would have changed history because he would have become president instead of Truman.
You also have to remember what the Democratic Party was comprised of in the 40s.
I know. That's why they put Truman, senator from Missouri, over a progressive that believed in equal rights between Africans and whites and women.
And it wasn't until the 60s when the Republicans employed the Southern strategy, where all those people that supported that stuff moved and switched parties.
I highly recommend to anybody to watch this show. That's why you can't listen to any
Republican that tells you, "Oh, we're the Lincoln Party." You are not anymore.
Truman was the turning point right there. He was the one that dropped the bomb, despite the fact that Japan was going to surrender anyway.
Spent all the money on
He's the one that reneged on all the deals FDR made with Stalin and made the Russians hate us. Henry Wallace said, and it cannot be any more true, that if we continue going down the path of this aggressive bullying nature that Truman went forward with, that we are going to become the most hated nation on earth. That people will never ever look at us as equals.
Well, you know, it's the only thing that stopped us from doing that, right? It was that the Russians also got nuclear weapons.
They discovered that 6 or 7 years later. I mean,
What I'm saying is, there's a period from when we used the bomb till when the Russians got their own bomb, which is the thing that started the Cold War. Was that we would go around the world dick swinging and telling everyone what to do.
But they would never have developed the bomb or even moved as quickly if we hadn't antagonized them by setting off detonations in the Marshall Islands and by threatening to bomb them if they didn't leave
would
northern
have never
Iran.
built the bomb if we didn't think Hitler was going to get
exactly. So, but you can see where that is taking us. And if we go to Trump at the United Nations, where he is standing up there like dozens of dictators from Muammar Gaddafi to Kim Jong Il.
Christina Derrick asked, "What's the name of the show?" The
Untold Story or History of the United States by Oliver Stone. It's on Netflix. It's absolutely amazing, unbiased, it's just great. I really enjoy learning.
And I
do
things. Not recommend you watch it until this show's over.
Yes,
the second
exactly.
page. That's the name of this
Finish
show.
the second page. But when Trump stands at the UN at that podium and addresses the world, a gathering of the leaders.
One more
of the
thing
world.
Before you do this. This is good. I just want one more button on that thing.
Mm-hmm.
Regarding the Cosby sentencing today, and regarding that trial, Bill Cosby is rich and had all the best lawyers, and they still broke protocol and opened up sealed documents that were agreed to be sealed by their own prosecutors.
Well, we're in the age of broken protocols.
What will happen when it's just some poor black kid from the streets?
Well, when it's a poor white kid from the streets, you get a second season of a series on Netflix.
Yeah, how many black people get seasons of shows because they were wrongly convicted? So
most of them just get $20, pat on the back, and say sorry, and then they send them on their way. In Florida, you get nothing if you were wrongly convicted.
So I just think about it in that context.
I do.
Bill Cosby is rich. What about all the poor people that this could happen to, that didn't allegedly do what Bill Cosby did?
I agree. We've seen plenty of it leading up, over
and
the summer.
if now that they've done this in the same way, in the same way that people just sort of see that they can get away with things, and when Trump talks crazy and he sees he gets away with it, so he just does more. You think prosecutors are not going to do this even more now that they got away with that?
You never know. Mueller could do it to Manafort. You never know. But
anyways, please continue.
So
that's
Trump,
all I want to say about that. I want to say more, but that's all I'll say.
That's valid. That's very valid, and we should all think about that kind of stuff. But unfortunately, 90% of a person's day is spent thinking about what's best for themselves. But with Trump standing up there in the same spot that people like Hosni Mubarak and the leader of the Muslim Brotherhood, Muammar Gaddafi, Mahmoud Ahmadinejad, Vladimir Putin, these people that have stood up and yelled at the world, said, "We are a sovereign nation. We will do what we want, what's in our best interest, and no one can tell us what to do." This is something that time and time again the United States, Western democracies
like a toddler.
have condemned left and right, no matter what, they've condemned those kinds of speeches as expansionist, as zealots, as fascist, as fanatical. You know, we see that kind of a speech coming out of Iran, bam, sanctions. We see that kind of stuff coming out of Turkey, bam, sanctions. All this stuff, and then Donald Trump gets to stand up in front of these people saying we no longer believe in globalism. We don't. Not that we ever really legitimized the ICC, but you know, making a big deal about pointing out that the United States doesn't recognize the ICC, International Criminal Court, and saying that globalism, world treaties, world trade, all that stuff, that it doesn't work, that America is going to look out for America, and then tells the rest of the world, you look out for your countries too. It almost sounds ominous and threatening, like we're going to come in, we're going to tell you what to do. If you don't like it, that's fine, go fend for yourself, because that's where you'll just have to live with Iran and you have to live with all these other countries. But now they are kind of abandoning it. They're going to the arms of China. They're going to the arms of Russia. So what if we're crippling the Iranian economies, the Russian economies, the Chinese yuan for now? When those $21 trillion in debts come due, either we go to war or we pay them back and the American people suffer. And the only thing that has kept these countries from calling in their debts is knowing that we would destroy them far more than they would recover from us. And that's just the American mentality is aggression, it's bullying, it is dick swinging. I'm a proud American. I believe that every citizen of any country should be proud of their country and want them to succeed. But just like I don't want to succeed at the expense of my own neighbors, I don't want to succeed at the expense of a million people around the world that are going to die because brutal dictatorships spring up and no American government will intercede because we want to be isolationists all of a sudden, despite the fact that the world is the way it is because the United States and the dollar built it that way. We intervened after World War II in almost every single country, and over the period of the Cold War, we did every single thing we could to either support vicious dictators that supported us or to topple democratically elected governments that could possibly be susceptible to communism.
Also, the reason World War I and World War II happened is because countries were isolationists.
Mm-hmm. Everybody thought, look out for yourself, militarize yourself, bang on your chest to make sure everybody knows that you're there, and it gets out of hand because eventually somebody does bark too much and somebody does cross a line. A shot is fired. Someone's pushed into the front.
Fareed Zakaria did a very interesting piece where he talked about the European Union, and he was talking about an article that Bono wrote, right? Saying that you can still have your German pride and Irish pride and British pride and still be a part of the EU, and the EU should start to think of itself as one nation because they would be more powerful on the world stage, and because they weren't thinking of themselves as separate. And I found that interesting only in that I believe this is what Africa should do. But I say all that to say it is these intertwined economies. It is trade deals. It is, the protection that we give our allies, right? That is what has kept the world at relative peace.
Relative, yeah.
Right?
And expanding populations don't make it any easier.
Right. And so I just think that this idea of nationalism versus globalism, every time we've tried nationalism in the past, it led to full-scale war.
That's the only point to doing that, is to get people ready to fight.
Right?
Get them amped up on, how do they get warlords to gather children? How do they get them to fight in Africa? And these tribal wars that are always going on, you make people hate your neighbor. The Rwandan genocide, 1 million people died in a country the size of South Carolina.
Well, let's be clear.
Because they were told, kill your neighbor, they're not as good as you.
Yeah, but why were they told that?
Because the Hutus and the Tutsis, just like tribes are everywhere in the world, hated each other, and they just needed someone to throw a match in.
Hang on.
They needed someone to throw a match in.
Going to give you a little untold history lesson here.
Of Rwanda?
Yes. Do you know what Rwanda is the #1 producer of in the world?
I don't.
Coltan.
What is coltan?
Do you have a cell phone?
I do.
Do you have a computer?
I do.
you got some coltan.
Cool.
Right? Now, that genocide happened, it was really a proxy for a regime change. And the person that was in charge of Rwanda, I can't remember his name right now, after that genocide happened, is a person that was amenable to creating trade deals and opening up the mines that were in Rwanda to all of these tech companies that use these things.
Yeah, because they were isolationist and people couldn't get to the valuable resource they wanted. Just it's the reason why we supported the Shah in Iran. It's the reason why we supported the Sandinistas and came after Manuel Noriega. It's the same reason why we toppled the governments of Brazil, of Greece, of all these, and we put vicious dictators in, but they were willing to sell us their oil and their natural resources or create a buffer.
By the way, I'm not saying that tech companies funded that.
No,
I'm saying that someone who is not from Rwanda after that ran Rwanda, and magically the mines were opened up for trade around the world.
I mean that's kind of what happened with Robert Mugabe in Zimbabwe. I mean, the country refused to open up to the rest of the world. Japan, back in the Tokugawa age, refused to open up to the rest of the world, and then we forced our way in, and we gave Japan cannons, and we gave them gunpowder, and we industrialized them.
And we gave them Tom
Cruise is the last samurai. Yeah, actually, that story is in there. Well, one of the things I wanted to mention about this is that Trump is calling for basic isolationism. He brought up the Monroe Doctrine.
Can we stop for one more second? Can we talk about the fact that he got fucking laughed at?
Yes. Yeah.
Can we
mentioned
discuss
it in the synopsis.
Okay.
Because he was laughed at when he said that his administration had been so successful in 2 years.
Right. All the leaders of the world bust out laughing, and he basically said, "Oh, he didn't expect that."
Yeah.
Right? Now, I want to laugh at that, right? I want to say ha ha ha, but guess what? He's our president. And I get people saying, "Oh, he's not my president." If you're a citizen, he's your president, unfortunately.
It's true.
Right? And so the United States is basically laughed out of the UN.
And the UN is situated in New York City, for those of you who don't know where the UN is.
Like,
we got laughed at in our own houses.
Think about that.
I know. I thought about it too.
America is the laughing stock of the world. And it's sad. Like, I want to laugh, but it's really sad.
That's how he isolates you. He's used to breaking up people who are allied against him. He's used to turning people against each other. It's what he did with the American people in an election. It's what he did in business to fight off people suing him for not paying them or for discrimination suits. He always finds a way to turn people against each other. He makes suggestions that we should be isolated. He brought up the Monroe Doctrine, which President Monroe had established, that said, the Western Hemisphere is America's, and no one can interfere in our backyard. So Europe, get out of Central America, get out of South America, you're done. It's all America's. So he's bringing up that tough talk of isolationism, but at the same time, hemispherism. So one of the only reasons that any country would want to become isolated, or not country, but a leader would want their country to be isolated, is so that the crimes and civil rights violations can be committed without interference from the world community. Not that we care what the world says about us, but even less.
Or, I'm just going to address the elephant in the room. If the world is not united, Russia can take over. And
Russia doesn't have the capacity to take over.
Okay.
But the United States very easily could if we pull out of the rest of the world.
Hear me out. The breaking up of the UN, it only benefits Russia.
Agreed. I mean, Stalin wanted to break up the UN right after it formed.
Right, because the world can get together, be it sanctions, be it the threat of all the G7 now, I guess, coming after Russia for doing bad things. Like, if all those nations are broken up, or not, I mean, the unions are broken up, the alliances are broken up, then that leaves an opening for a Russia or someone else to come around and expand their kingdom.
Well,
right? So I say all that to say, again, why does this president keep doing the things that Putin would love him to do?
That's a totally different episode I mean, the biggest
It's
fear
all
right
related,
now,
though,
when
man.
if you talk about getting rid of United States' role in the United Nations and start abdicating our role as leaders, we've already given up fighting the Chinese in the South China Sea. They've built their islands, they've expanded their territory. The Philippines, Malaysia, Indonesia, Japan, they're all threatened, and we're doing nothing to help them. There's only a few countries left in the world that recognize Taiwan because China won't do business with a country that doesn't recognize them and shun Taiwan. The United States recognizes China, but we wanted to keep other countries that were in South America and Latin America recognizing Taiwan just so we could do business through them. The governments, I think, of Honduras and Nicaragua, maybe, I think, just changed their recognition from Taiwan to China, which is growing. It's a huge economy. It's a huge
Speaking of
population.
China, a lot
If
of
the United
tariffs.
if the United States backs off, then China grows, its sphere of influence grows, Russia's influence grows, Western democracy. And I wrote this down because I thought it's just pure um, irony. Is it the world will be forced into like a warm war where you've got everybody aligned with the United States and you have everybody aligned with Russia and you have everybody that's aligned with China, and then you've got this vast Middle Earth of Western
Of
and
Frodo
Central Europe,
and Gandalf.
yeah, mostly of Europe and of African countries that have not aligned themselves, except most of them would be aligned with China, I imagine. And you're now left with
It's crazy what building a bridge gets you.
I know, or what blowing one up does. And it's a fate that I wrote somewhat poetically. It's a fate befitting a continent that has plunged the world into war so many times. The the thing with America is, though, or with the world in general, is that the lack of resources will create vassalage states, and millions will die in fighting, famine, and fatigue. And perhaps the only salvation is that, as one of the youngest nations on earth, we are brash and naive enough, and most easily able to convince our populace that war and its massive casualties can be justified. In a way, maybe a little isolationism is good for the world because, for better or worse, humanity will see how the world continues without an omnipresent American influence. And if we don't turn our aggressions and our pride to foreigners, we have to turn it in on ourselves, or become this wealthy utopia that gets rid of, a $500 billion military budget. But, China, Russia, and them, they're going to have their debts to call in. They've got, even if their economies fail, just the interest alone on what we owe them is insane. If we go isolationist, and you have to remember during World War II, no one helped the Jews. No one helped the Armenians. No one helped the Chinese from Manchuria to Nanking. The rapes and the murders of civilians went completely unnoticed. And it wasn't until the Poles were attacked, when white faces were attacked, that looked just like the rest of us, that the British and the French and eventually the United States decided to stand up and do something about it. But we would not be in this world right now today if we hadn't backed out of and reneged on every deal we made with the Soviet Union. And then we turned the entire world on this hunt for the Reds, where it was a never-ending battle between democracy and between communism, when it really was not like that. The Soviet Union didn't have the resources to go on a worldwide adventure, but they were forced to, and Stalin was constantly paranoid and fearful, and 30 million people died because of it.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm saying, that having Donald Trump standing up at the UN saying things like this, telling these people that our alliances and our trade and whatnot doesn't mean anything because we're going to do whatever we want, that's just the recipe for a third world war. That's the recipe for something bad to happen. So I don't know what else can be said about that besides that. You saw it, I saw it. It's recorded. It's in history now.
It's a disgrace.
It is
what it is.
It's a disgrace to those.
By the way,
green
I am
blocks.
currently reading the Bob Woodward book.
Are you?
Very good read.
Fear?
Yes.
Are you afraid to tell people about it?
I am not, but I want to get through it first. So I'll be done with it by next week's show.
You're reading it, or is it an Audible?
Come on, man. Why you put me on blast like that? It's
Okay.
an Audible. It's an Audible book. I listen to it on the train.
You're not reading. You're listening. It's
Same-
okay. That's the
no,
same as a
it
podcast.
takes the same level of focus.
It does. Listen, I have Audible books. I love them.
Because you can't do other things while you're listening to an audio book.
Well, you can't do other things while you're reading a book. I can drive and listen to an audio book.
Well, yeah, you can drive.
I
but
can
I'm saying,
walk and
you
listen to an
can't
audio
work and do these things. You have to be singularly focused.
I
And
agree.
if you had to be singularly focused, you could read it. It's the same thing. You got to process information and listen to it. But the point is, he talked about what the P tape is.
Did he now?
Yeah.
Did he now?
I will leave you with this one bit. and this will be our
A
closing
tidbit?
note. So apparently, the genesis of the alleged P tape is that Trump was on a trip to Russia, and we already know he hates Obama. So he specifically requested the room that the Obamas stayed in, and he hired Russian prostitutes to perform lewd sex acts where they urinated on each other on the bed that Michelle and Barack slept in when they were in Moscow, so that he could defile the place that they stayed. And to that I say, what a fucking scumbag.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's not even
Just
surprising.
top-
Just not even surprising.
Just
top-notch scum.
top scum.
Top-notch scum. Just like that Knobbenbacher, whatever guy, the Trump strategist that gave the stripper that he got pregnant an abortion pill and then tried to make her sign an NDA.
Why not?
And then she was in the hospital for days. She lost her kid and bled for 3 days.
Also, one other thing
Republican.
about the book, Trump is an idiot.
Oh, yeah.
And everyone around him knows it.
Agreed.
That's all I got. You got anything else?
That's all I got. Do you got anything else?
I know that Christina Derrick says Hitler.
Yes, I think she's been referring to Trump. And I also want to make mention, too, that a little bit of information you'll learn if you watch that show is that we lost about 450,000 troops during World War II, and the Soviet Union lost 27 million people. So
wow,
you can imagine how they felt like they deserved a little bit more of a share of a say in how the world was developed, but they didn't. And we as a people and not as individuals led the world to the way it is today. So we bear some responsibility to also fix it. So I say today is voter registration day. Make sure you registered to vote. Mail in your ballots. If you live in New Jersey, you can start early voting. If you did not properly figure it out, make sure that you know the rules for filing a provisional ballot in your state, or if your state offers early voting, take advantage of it. Vote by mail and absentee ballots are a great way to make sure you don't have to stand in line, as voter suppression usually starts with making people wait to vote. So I highly encourage you to do that.
By the way, Courtney says the world is in on the joke. I don't know if they're in on it. They're laughing at us.
Well,
not laughing with us.
You know,
all right.
Two last little bits. Just wanted to say, one, somebody had said before that there was a deep state, trying to get rid of Trump, and that's what the whole 25th Amendment was about. 25th Amendment gives the power of his cabinet members to suggest that he should be removed, with a possibility of him coming back if he's sane or whatever. And
yes,
the
all
cabinet,
he has to do is come back and say, I'm fine, and then they would have to invoke it again.
Yes, to the Congress would have to decide. But you have to understand that these are all hand-picked people. The vice president, his cabinet, are people that Trump picked himself. That's not a deep state. Those are his own people. And that if he were to be removed for not being mentally sound, would he be our first American president to live in exile? Because he would be removed, and he guarantees he's not going to be happy about it. But if he's removed on a mental incapacity, would he then be remanded to mental health services or confined to a hospital bed?
I believe that there would be, actually. I know people say, oh, don't say that. I honestly believe there'd be violence in the streets with his supporters.
I agree. So, yeah, I just wanted to say that. I had written a little sort of kind of poem thing about immigration, but I guess it doesn't really fit with the show today.
Yeah, Courtney says the campaign manager picked Pence. Pence has just been there waiting for Trump. He's just been waiting for the stars to line up.
You little bastard.
And again, for me, the new Deep Throat, whoever wrote the anonymous article, is either Pence or Nikki Haley. That's where my money's at.
I mean, if he's sleeping with Nikki Haley, then you could see how she'd have that information.
Wow. Okay. On that note,
well, you're the one reading the book. You're the and the last book, which suggested that he was sleeping with someone, and it alluded to, Nikki Haley being the one.
No, I didn't say Nikki Haley.
Everybody thought it was Omarosa or that other chick that what was her name that left?
The one that was dating Rob Porter.
Yeah.
Can't remember her name, but
wow, she was so powerful before. Now we can't remember her name. I will remember it in 2 seconds, I'm sure, as soon as we get off the air.
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
All right. So that was Where can they find you, good sir?
They can find me at the little word scrolling on the bottom of the screen, which will, if you punch it into your GPS, bring you somewhere near St. Louis, Missouri.
Hey.
Where I will be rolling on my dubs. But you can also go on the Twitsters at Joseph So Swald. But I would prefer
mean in the tweets.
Where you are more likely to get in touch with me on Facebook and messaging me through that. or posting something on the second page, go to the YouTube page, and you may also comment there, and I'm sure that stuff will work its way back to us.
Please follow us on YouTube. Subscribe, smash the little bell so that you can get notified when we go live.
And we're not doing advertising. We don't make any money off of that. We just want you to be informed. What about you, Steve? Where they finding you at? I heard you got a new Snapchat.
No, you didn't. You can find me on your favorite social media network, as long as it's not Snapchat, at Steve A.M. Johnson. Also, you can find me on the Reel. We had a good show yesterday, so you can go and scroll down or up, whatever direction, find that. Or you can go check out R Squared Network or the second page on YouTube. And please, the most important thing is tell your friends about this. If you could, it would help us a lot. Share it on your social media so that you can spread the word and we can grow this thing. But keep the comments coming. We love taking your comments, and we'll even invite people on the show to talk to us.
Just try and get Courtney on the show. He's always there. Courtney's there.
Courtney, stop effing around.
Didn't we used to have, we had a couple other people who watched.
Yes. Christina Derrick.
That's my aunt, actually.
Oh, okay. Well, hi, auntie. All right, that's
good.
it.
Good to go. All right, thank you everybody for tuning in again. Please check out our Facebook or our YouTube page. We'll be back next Tuesday in our prime time hour between 9 and 10. We will be moving a little bit back towards our pictures and whatnot and the kind of a newsy feel of it, but we're going to try and maintain this flow, keeping the episodes at about an hour long. We really, really appreciate you all tuning in.
And we're also going to release shorter videos too, just so they're easily consumable for the people that either don't have time or attention spans. Or
want to know just one topic. So thank you for watching. Come back next week. We appreciate you. Good night.
Hugs, not drugs.
And don't forget to vote, but sometimes drugs are okay.